gift of love. On Tuesday, peace came from above. On Wednesday,
told me to have more faith.
On Thursday,
gave me just a little more grace.
on Friday,
Told me to watch and pray.
on Saturday, told me just what to say. On Sunday, gave me the power divine, just to let my little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine every day, every day. I'm gonna let my little light shine. On Monday, we give the gift of love. On Tuesday, peace came from above. On Wednesday,
Told me to have more faith.
on Thursday,
gave me just a little more grace.
on Friday,
Told me to watch and pray.
on Saturday, told me just what to say. On Sunday, gave me the power divine, just to let my little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine every day, every day. I'm gonna let my little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine every day, every day, every day, every day. I'm gonna let my little light shine.
We are really lucky to have that choir. They're tremendous. Can you hear me? Today I'm going to talk on love, which is the greatest of all things. In church a few weeks ago, Pastor Dick left us a very important statement by Billy Graham, which still haunts me. Reverend Graham gave us food for thought. He said we should ask ourselves 3 questions before we speak. Firstly, is it true? Secondly, is it kind? And thirdly, does it glorify Christ? Something can be true, but if our response is not kind, it doesn't glorify Christ. We can be kind, but if we're doing it for our own self-gratification, it does not glorify Christ. If our way of thinking and responding comes from a need to be in power, then it's unkind and boastful and does not glorify Jesus. If our speaking and thinking disregards the needs of others and is unkind, then we're not glorifying Jesus. If our responses to others are unbecoming, arrogant, easily provoked, then we have not been glorifying Jesus. If we followed those 3 questions as Billy Graham meant, if we did this as persons, if we did this as politicians, if we did this as nations, the world would be a better place to live. What Reverend Graham has said is a shortened version of Paul's statements in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. I would like to read what Paul has said, because to me, this is pure poetry. If I could speak all the languages of earth and angels, but didn't love others, I would be only a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. if I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but didn't love others, I would be nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it needs no record of being wrong. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Now let's consider what I just read in Corinthians. Our present society often confuses love and lust. Unlike God's love, it's always directed towards us. But we often turn our love in towards ourselves. God's love is utterly unselfish. This kind of love goes against our natural inclinations. It is impossible to have love unless God gives us and helps us to set aside our natural desires so that we can love and not expect anything in return. The more we can become like Christ, the more love we can show to each other. Paul says, love is not irritable. Sometimes we become irritable or angered by others, and we don't even know why. One of my reasons is a desire to run things perfectly, which can lead to anger at events or people who get in the way. We who are easily irritated or angered need to remember that perfection exists only in God. I'm going to say that again. We who are easily irritated or angered need to remember that perfection exists only in God. Now I want to tell you a story about Willie. I have a little dog, originally small and skinny, but now rotund. He came to our farm as a stray, flea infested. His left ear was torn, and he'd been kicked in the mouth, and his teeth were not in alignment. Obviously, he'd been beaten. Because of his fleas, I didn't want to bring him into the house. So I slept with him outside before he spent the next 3 days at the vet. This was in August. It was freezing that night. Seriously, it was really freezing that night in August. And I slept in the barn at the doorway, and Willie was so frightened he would not cross the doorway to come in. Now, we had a big fence around there, so he couldn't get away, but he would not even come across that doorway. He was so frightened. The point to be made is that I sacrificed my body for him that night, nearly freezing to death. Now, I have never harmed Willie in any way, and I've always loved him. And he's been with us for 5 years, and yet he still cowers downward in fear when I initially approach him. Once I pet and kiss him, and then he licks my face, all is well. Willie doesn't do this with Ann or with any females. This is only with males. His love button was never pushed by a male. Now I'm pushing his love button all the time, but he still has those inner feelings of fear and insecurity with men. I'm confident that with continued love, Willie will get better. love buttons that have not been pushed in some sort of way. If our love spaces have not been filled, we will seek power rather than true love. We look to power to fill our insecurities, or we use substances to calm us, which gives us a false calm. Anne will frequently ask me why I always have to have my own way rather than listening to her. Now you husbands out there, how would you answer that question? In fact, Fred, I'd like to have you answer that question for me. What would you say?
If he don't get his own way, he pouts.
Fred's power. Well, my simple answer was that I'm always right. Now, I know the very things that may be so-called successful, the desire to control things, the desire for perfection, and the value of persistence have led to my episodes of anger and verbal outbursts. The doctor part of me has been due to compassion. It seems important for me to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13 on a daily basis. And as Ann said, also to listen to her because she's always right. And I like to ponder over what Billy Graham has said. Those simple words that he gave us has had a great effect upon my life. And certainly, I'm in the baby stage, but I shall mature with the help of the Holy Spirit. I have a son, Matthew, who's a defense attorney, and he said that he found most people who have addictions and power struggles leading to crime usually have some underlying experience in childhood that gives rise to this. Mother Teresa said, "It is easy to love people far away. It is not always easy to love people near us." She says it's easier to give a cup of rice to help relieve hunger than to relieve the loneliness and pain of someone unloved in our own home. Bring love into your home, for this is where our love for each other will start. Perhaps parents could consider these Corinthian scriptures just reviewed. Now, in 1994, Dorothy Law Noty, an American writer and family counselor, wrote a poem for her daily column in the California Torrance Herald entitled, "Children Learn What They Live." By the time she died in 2005, it had been expanded into a book, and there were more than 3 million copies in print. Children learn what they live could be another description of 1 Corinthians 13 for use in parenting. I'd like to read what she said. If children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with fear, they become apprehensive. If children live with pity, they learn to feel sorry for themselves. If children live with ridicule, they learn to feel shy. If children live with jealousy, they learn to feel envy. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. Now let's look at what happens when children are treated correctly with love. If children live with encouragement, they learn confidence. If children live with tolerance, they learn patience. If children live with praise, they learn appreciation. If children live with acceptance, they learn to love. If children live with approval, they will learn to like themselves. If children live with recognition, they learn it is good to have a goal. If children live with sharing, they learn generosity. If children live with honesty, they learn truthfulness. If children live with fairness, they learn justice. If children learn with kindness and consideration, they learn respect. If children live with security, they learn to have faith in themselves and in those about them. And lastly, if children live with friendliness, they learn the world is a nice place in which to live. Paul's words are also paraphrased by Thumper's mother in the Disney movie Bambi when she asked Thumper, "What did your father tell you this morning?" And little Thumper answered, "If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all." So in conclusion, we must ask the Holy Spirit to help us to actually become aware of how we love and speak and what we're actually saying to love and glorify Christ. At this time, I'd like us to bow our heads. Our glorious Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to be in this church. We thank you for your love, and we ask the Holy Spirit to enter our bodies to help guide us in how we speak with kindness and truth and glorification to God. Amen.